Greetings, YouTube. I've lived in this town for 49 years, almost 50 years. And for the entirety of that time, there has been a Sears in my town. Except now there isn't. I've watched numerous businesses go away over the years. There was a Woolworths on the main drag at one point. Beautiful old building. I wish they preserved it and used it for something else, as opposed to knocking it down and putting up some ugly ass atrocity that was designed uh, in the 80s. Um, I've seen department store disappear, hardware store disappear, and more restaurants than I could possibly name. Some of them not lasting very long. A high percentage of almost all businesses go bankrupt in the first 5 years. Um, and Throughout that, there's always been a Sears. I don't mind shopping at Walmart or Target because there are no mom and pop store type department stores in the area filling those needs. They just don't exist any longer. I don't mind shopping at the mall, though lots of places at the mall don't really interest me. Um, One of the few being like Best Buy and, until quite recently, Sears. I can remember when Sears was on Elm Street, which was the business heart of the city at one time. And then, rather than take up the mantle of renovating the Mill District, and at one time the city of Manchester had the largest contiguous mill building in the world. It was over a mile long, connected buildings from one end of the city to the other along the riverbank. Um, Rather than renovate those, they thought it was a bad idea, that it would draw business away from the main drag, even though the main strip and the mill buildings are within sight of each other. You could quite easily walk from one to the other, very easily walk from one to the other. They decided not to renovate the mill buildings. The mill buildings have been used, of course, over the years by apartments and businesses. There's a school down there. Southern New Hampshire University has a branch down there. Um, and the buildings are no longer contiguous because they had to tear some of them down because of like anthrax, because there used to be um, a slaughterhouse down there that would dump offal directly into the river. Not good for water quality. But instead of renovating those buildings and turning them into shopping centers, they did nothing, and someone built a shopping center at the other end of the city, which drew all the businesses down to that direction, and the main strip in the city died. And it's now pretty much nothing but restaurants and a few niche stores. Yeah. And one of the businesses that went from the main strip to this new mall was Sears. And it was an anchor store. Big one. In fact, I found out that the store not only is a large space, but it actually owns some of the parking lot next to it that it abuts. It actually owns that space. That space belongs to it, not the mall itself. That was strange, but what have you. I got to talk to one of the guys in the garage before they disappeared, because I had planned on having them do something for me, except they couldn't because, well, they were going out of business in like 5 days. It just seems strange, though, to live in a city that doesn't have a Sears. That somehow this corporation, which I have no love of or connection to, it's just gone. And I mean, like craftsman's tools don't mean what they used to. I mean, they're not owned in the U.S. any longer. They're made elsewhere. That doesn't necessarily make them inferior, but it does mean that they're not a real American icon anymore. They just don't exist as part of the American tool culture like they used to. And the whole craftsman guarantees, and I don't have access to that now any longer. And their garage was pretty decent. They treated us nice. I could drop the car off. It was not that far from my house, close enough that I actually have, pardon me, dropped the car off and walked home. So it wasn't that far. Of course, not far from me as much farther than it is for some people. Some people don't like to walk. If it's like if it's more than like a quarter or half a mile, they think it's too far to walk. And I'm not that guy. If it's less than 5 miles, I'll walk without a problem. Um, but they're gone. And it's strange to have this mildly existential crisis about the fact that a huge megacorporation, well, not as huge as it used to be, huge megacorporation is no longer in my city. But they aren't. Be intrigued to see who uses that space. It's big enough to put more than one um, business into it. It's really quite large. And I actually didn't go and pick over the bones. I do that a lot when businesses go away, but I couldn't do it this time. I didn't go in there to snipe up bargains, and I normally have no problem with that. But there was something sad knowing that Sears was gone. I mean, it's not completely gone from the state of New Hampshire. There are, I think, two other locations in the state still. Could be three, I can't remember. But none of them are near me, and conveniently, definitely not within walking distance. I think the closest one is 20-something miles away, um, and that's just not convenient to get your car inspected or something. So I'll go to Pet Boys or something like that and have them do it. I think that's actually what I did recently. I had to get some new tires as well because the ones I had, two of the tires I had were in fact bald. But yeah, Sears is gone, and it feels weird. And it was weird when the Sears catalog no longer became a thing. But I still had the company. Now the company's gone. I can remember going through the Sears catalog as a kid, thinking it was awesome, looking at all the toys. And I actually have somewhere kicking around here, I've got a copy of a reproduction of the 1900 edition of the Sears catalog. Very useful resource if you're a gamer and if you're going to be doing things in the late 19th century or early 20th century. Very useful to give you an idea of the type of technology that was available. But yeah, so tell me, have you been impacted by this? Has Sears disappeared in your town? Or have you lost, is the latest thing that you lost like a Toys R Us, which also seems a little strange not to have around. So let's talk about the businesses that have disappeared and how they have affected our lives. From the huge mega corporations like Toys R Us and Sears to little mom and pop places that you miss, that are gone, you wish they were still here. Hey, anybody remember video arcades? I can remember when we had two of them on the main drag in the city of Manchester. No longer. those no longer exist. I can remember video rental places. There were multiples of them, small mom and pop ones, and of course the big one, Blockbuster, which lasted the longest, right up until the bitter end, when things like Netflix drove a stake through their heart. So yeah, let's talk about the corporations that are gone, and whether we care or not, and whether that makes us sad. And I'll be honest, it may be a depressing concept at some level, but the fact that Sears isn't here anymore does sadden me.